Hello, my name is Vasil, and I will be giving you a brief explanation of my study titled AI-Enabled Airline Cabin Services. This research is co-authored by my colleague Tita and my supervisor Satu. It is a part of my PhD studies at the University of Lapland. In the first slide titled AI Augmented Services, AIAS, this is a concept that I'm using to ensure that the cabin services or cabin interactions within an airline remain humanized, remain personalized. Digital services are becoming ubiquitous these days within the airline industry, and especially at the airport when a passenger is checking in, within the cabin experience when ordering your, for example, meal through the menu, Wi-Fi connection that the airline is providing these days. These are the type of service interactions that I can refer to as digital interactions, high-tech digital interactions. This study focuses on how to convert these high-tech services that are available today into high-touch. I will explain later what I mean by high-touch services. For now, I would like to explain to you in this slide how I use service design to provide answers to the questions that I'm introducing here. And again, the question is how to provide values, emotional values, personalized values through digital interactions in the cabin of airlines. Firstly, I take use of AI to help me into providing that kind of high-touch service. AI processing for emotional values during the airline cabin experience. So here what I mean by that is that AI can provide a assistance to the user in order to get these emotional values. I will explain later how I use AI in later slides, but the main approach to AI here that I'm using is through service design. And the main role of AI in this study is that it is an assistant and not a kind of service that is autonomous, that's working perhaps working for the passenger, but working autonomously. That is definitely not the approach of this study. Rather, AI is working with the user at all times. So here AI is more about machine learning and more about working in the background and giving the passenger or the user quicker selections. I can explain how I approach AI in this study later in later slides, but let me now explain what I mean by service design and how service design can help me answer the question of how to provide high-touch services within the cabin. Firstly, service design is a human-centric approach to service creation in which the user is typically made the main subject of the service research. So in other words, I really focus on the user here. The user's pain points, the user's needs is really my main focal point. Service design discipline, there are numerous tools that I have been able to use to reach answers through that, while also keeping in mind that the AI that I would like to use here, artificial intelligence, is always seen through that lens, is always seen through the service design lens, which is humanizing the service and placing the user at the center. And therefore, AI integrates the human factor into the service experience through things like high touch in order to create trust and improve the perception of cabin service quality. Now we come to the second slide titled High Tech, Multimodal Sensors, Access, and Control. In order for me to explain high touch in more depth, I would have to clarify what I mean by high tech here. High tech services or high tech devices are, number one, multiple streams of data are essential for achieving comprehensive results. And what I mean by that is that the more data I get, the better. So the better I have high tech devices, the more I will get reliable data because I'm getting a flow of data from different angles that I can later analyze, or that AI can analyze. So this is we can see this as a first step before AI starts working in the background. We need data. The more data we have, the better in this concept. So, for example, wearable sensors, facial recognition, sound ambience, voice tone detection, and physiological and emotional detectors, what those do, they provide as much data as possible. Perhaps not all this data is needed, but this is what I mean by high tech. So in order to get high touch, I also need high tech. And the more data I have, the more the AI is able to process and provide more accurate solutions for the user. So in that sense, when there are sensors, whether through mobile or wearables or a smartwatch or a smart jacket or physiological detectors that, for example, in the future would be installed within the seat that can tell the heart rate and that they can tell all of these factors that the passenger goes through. All of these are taken into the database, and all of these will be used in order to provide high touch. In this third slide, we come to high touch. And as I have introduced earlier, high touch provides well-being, emotional values, emotional intelligence. Firstly, one of the most significant roles AI can play for the cabin experience. So in order to so basically AI here is being used significantly to provide these three factors that I mentioned: well-being, emotional values, emotional intelligence. So now we are not just looking at data anymore, we are looking at how this data can be converted into something that is felt by the user and that is emotionally felt by the user. Secondly, service consumption is enhanced by augmenting users' capabilities and improving the decision-making process. Again, this is what I meant by AI. It really is a buddy, if you will. It's a friend for the user. It's not taking decisions on behalf of the user. It is helping the user to take better decisions, quick decisions. And in that sense, I believe that that kind of concept can also provide trust with AI. Trust within providing data to the AI when we know that these values and these benefits are going to be provided. We can perhaps be more comfortable with providing data. High touch is the process of personalizing the user's digital experience, and that third point, it really boils down to that third point. In order to convert high tech into high touch, it is essential to personalize and to know who the customer is, to know what the customer has gone through, to predict pain points, to alleviate problems within the services, give quicker decisions. And in that sense, AI and high tech would be much more valuable than, for example, having the customer go through a application where they have to graphical input is what I call, and touch and search and do all of these things. Of course, this is sometimes not a problem if we are at home, but when we are at a very timed and limited space, limited time, we need quicker things. We need quicker solutions, and I believe with converting this technology that we have already into high touch through the lens of service design, we can provide better values, emotional values, which in turn also reflects to the company. The more a customer perceives quality within services, the more the brand image is enhanced. In this fourth slide, I would like to talk to you about my methodology and my research design. So I had the privilege of having several expert interviews, and within these interviews, I wanted to focus on the different angles of this concept and how it would work. So it was important for me to know what is going on in the market, so state of the art and benchmarking the market industry, what it wants, what it needs, what's out there, what is the demand, and what are we lacking. And sensor detection, and what I mean by that is the technology that we have available. Where has AI come at this point? So AI development, what can AI do? And in that sense, I focused on not just the airline industry, but almost all of the different kind of AI tools that are used in transportation. Service quality is what I spoke about earlier. It's a concept that focuses on providing the right service at the right moment. And it stems from service marketing, and it is one of the most important factors to provide values. And those kind of values that are provided at the time of need, when there is when the customer needs has a problem that needs to be alleviated, that kind of interaction provides most emotional value, and emotional values are the most valuable or the most important within service quality. That's how a customer perceives service quality, higher service quality. And sophisticated agency is when it refers to the AI that I spoke about and how I approach AI in this study. Sophisticated agency here means that AI is at no means autonomous. Rather, AI is more of an assistant that the customer is able to gauge. So think of a volume button that you can lower when you want more of the user's decision making, and you can place that knob to a higher grade where you allow the AI to give you small, narrow down your selections to maybe one or two. So it's up to the customer here. And what I found out from the results or the analysis of my methodology are two main factors. The blockers, blocking this type of approach that I would like to take within the cabin services, AIAS again, blockers for AIAS, and emotional values for AIAS. The main blockers that I'm facing right now, and according to the analysis of the study, is lack of development. There is not enough development for that type of concept. Nevertheless, there are studies conducted right now that focus on that kind of concept, on humanizing the services through AI. The challenges, and one of the main challenges is the data sharing factor, how much data we want to share, how much data we are comfortable as users to share, and the regulations that come with that. So think of international regulations or even regional regulations for data sharing. And of course, cost. Cost goes back to cost of development and cost of also having high-tech devices within an airline, because the more devices we have, the more weight there is on an airline, and that is a cost. So it's how do we justify these blockers against the benefits that we were going to get? The benefits are emotional values. This concept can provide emotional values through, for example, emotional intelligence. The more the customer is reminded of the choices that they can make or what's best for them, the more the customer is aware of their emotional state, and therefore it provides better emotional intelligence, and customers know how to deal with their values and what kind of values they want. For example, emotional intelligence is when the AI here is letting the customer know that, okay, you have a certain amount of time for you to, for example, to make a connection flight. You can do so and so and so and so because I know what this airport is like. I know what these services like. The AI knows. And this is what you can do. And therefore, in a way, allowing the customer to know, do I want to go through this stress to get this value, or do I want to take another route and another easier route, but perhaps a longer route? And what I mean by that is maybe there's a delay and perhaps the connection is too tight. What about staying at a hotel, for example? These are the kind of things that is similar to a dialogue between AI and the user. And that's what I mean by providing emotional intelligence. Of course, there are a lot of opportunities that can stem from that kind of development, that can stem from this kind of study. So the more we test these kind of concepts, the more these opportunities will come that can provide solutions to problems that we now are facing or problems that we will face in the future. So development and more research is, of course, a key factor for this study and all studies. In the fifth slide, titled AIAS, AI Augmented Services, the relationship between technology and AI processing to produce human-centered values, this is a graphical interpretation of the results of the analysis of my methodology, and it can clearly show how high-tech and high-touch are part of one circle. So we can't have one without the other here. And they are basically weaved, if you will. They work hand in hand. It's not like high tech works and then it stops and then AI takes over and then it provides high touch. It's rather always continuously taking several amounts of data, processing them, providing high touch, and so on and so forth. The high tech, like I explained further, it's the multimodal sensors here, the access and control for the user, and the high touch is also was mentioned earlier, the emotional intelligence, well-being, emotional values. So that is the factors that circle around AI augmented services, AIAS. I would like to just real quick here give a quick explanation by what I mean by well-being in this study. So well-being is not exactly providing a walk in the park. it's not really just providing an easy walk, for, if you will, for the user, similar to walking through a park. It's more like being able to give enough resources for a challenge. That's what I can define here well-being as. When there is a set of problems and there are a set of challenges that are kind of the same weight, that is what I refer as well-being. To be realistic, there will always be obstacles within airline or any kind of journey within transportation, and especially in the cabin experience where it's most sensitive and there's less control. To have well-being in that sense means that when there is a problem for the customer, or also for the service provider, there's enough resources that we can choose from. When there are more problems and there's no alleviation and there's no resources to solve that I can say would be the opposite of well-being. So in that sense, AI is really here working to provide enough resources when challenges are faced. In this sixth slide and final slide, titled AI Augmented Services, AIAS, with the cabin crew, flight attendant, and passenger being connected, I'd like to explain more of what I have recently came across as far as state-of-the-art technology, what's happening right now as far as cabin services, and how that can be used also in a different manner. So previous slides I spoke about how this is more of a relationship between the user and the device. And the device being that there is AI in the background working to humanize that kind of interaction. Nevertheless, this concept can also bridge a gap between interactions that need to happen between the flight attendant and the passenger. And I will give you an example of a state-of-the-art, one of the most interesting state-of-the-art benchmarking, if you will, that I made recently to know how AI can help within the cabin services. So right now there are studies, and almost there has been studies, tests, but there will be airlines that will implement this service soon. And what that is allowing the passenger to communicate with the flight attendant without having to be face-to-face. Through a device. Basically, there will be Wi-Fi connection. That's important. We spoke about that as far as high-tech. So having reliable high-tech, having reliable Wi-Fi is important here for this to work. The concept is to allow the customer to order certain items, if you will, whether it's like, for example, water or a pillow, through that application. And that's something we haven't seen before. We would have to press a button and wait for a flight attendant, if they are not so busy, to come and ask them that question, and then get our cup of water or pillow I don't know how many minutes later. Sometimes there's a delay with that as well, because cabin crew have a lot more responsibilities than direct connections with the customer. So this type of state-of-the-art that is being studied now and almost going to be implemented allows the passenger to select what they want, a cup of water, a pillow, and allows the flight attendant to know the priority of how important that is. And that really helps also the cabin crew in that sense. So for the cabin crew to, for example, see how important that service is it an emergency? Is it something that they can provide? And provide it at the same time, meaning that they would have more time to focus on other duties. If 20 passengers are asking for a glass of water, they will be provided with water at the same time instead of going back and forth. If 20 passengers are asking for pillows, those pillows are packed in one trolley, if you will, and given to these passengers. So this concept that I'm speaking about, if we want to talk about how it's being implemented right now, that I would say is the first step that's being implemented. And of course, AI is the background that groups the orders in one and lets the cabin crew know how many orders we have here and there, instead of them graphically going to each seat and seeing which seats wants what. So think of an application, high-tech devices that can let the passengers know how many customers need this, how many customers need that, and also allow the passenger to know how long it would take. It's, I guess, a pain point when you order something and you don't know how long it takes. Let's say that customer needed more of an urgent question. At least they know that the service providers or the air attendants are doing their best to prioritize that kind of thing. So this is what's being implemented right now. And this concept that I have been studying, of course, can be developed further, where the problems that I spoke about, the more intense problems like the passenger not having enough time to connect, there's a delay within the same flight that they're on and they can't get to the next flight. This needs more data, this needs more processing. And if we look at what is happening right now within that kind of service, just simply ordering through these Wi-Fi connections and communicating with the air attendant, that can be stemmed to more complicated obstacles that can be solved in the future when we have more data, when we are able to collect more data, when data is justified. Data is justified from the customer, and data is justified through organizations and all the way up to government and regional and international organizations that process this type of data and know how important it is, or if it can be done or not. So these kind of values, the more we have, the more we can show these values to customers and organizations, the more data sharing is justified. And that has been it for my study. Thank you very much.